further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker. Seth Andrews is a broadcaster, storyteller, author, activist, and public speaker, best known as host of the popular website, podcast, and online community, The Thinking Atheist. Originally the product of Christian fundamentalism, today Seth is an advocate, not for religion, but for people. And while he, as a storyteller, loves the distraction of supernatural fiction, like the annual Halloween Ghost Stories broadcast, which I love, and audiobook, he ultimately encourages everyone to root their pursuit of the truth in reason and evidence and to pursue a personal relationship with reality. Seth, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a huge fan of RfR, and I appreciate the chance to sit at the big kids table with all of you. Good to be here.
Oh, I think you might be the big kids table, but we're glad that you brought us with you. And we are so excited to have you and hear from you. This is a topic that is super important to me. It's been impactful in my life, and I know it's one of the topics that people bring up so often here as something that is part of their recovery from religion. So I am so glad that you are here to bring your insights to us on this topic.
Well, I'm ready when you are. Just give me
All
the wink and the
right.
nod, and we'll do this thing.
Well,
Okay.
wink, wink, nod, nod. Let's do it.
I'm going to, here in just a second, try to share my screen, make sure that everybody can see it before we begin. But I've talked a lot about the damage done by shame cultures. And it's funny because even on the Thinking Atheist podcast this week, my special guests are two co-hosts of a show called You Can't Get to Heaven in a Miniskirt, which is, they titled it after an actual song. You can't get to heaven on roller skates because you'll skate right by, and you can't get to heaven in a miniskirt because God don't want no little flirts, So that's an interesting conversation. It will release tomorrow, Tuesday, the 5th of December, to everybody at the Thinking Atheist podcast. But, we've talked a lot about that, and that's what this presentation is. I released it a while back to YouTube, but I know there are a lot of people who have not yet seen it. So let me run over here to my slide and see if I can share with sound. So hopefully everybody can see what I am seeing, which is my logo. I always start with this question. Does anybody remember their first kiss? And I will never forget mine. Her name was Baleen. And I think I was like 14. This was in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. My mom thought it would be a good idea for my twin sister and I to learn good work ethic. And yes, I have a twin sister, Seth and Beth. And so she decided, well, we should be part of a volunteer program at a local hospital. We were just helpers. They were called Junior Guild, which is like candy stripers, except we did just a little bit more. And all the volunteers, all the teen volunteers had to wear these green smocks. And I found a kind of an approximation of what that looked like. And in my mind, Baleen, lovely Baleen, just rocked the smock. She just knocked my socks off. We were both assigned to work on the 9th floor at St. John's Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we just gophered. We delivered IB bags and paperwork and instructions and ran errands. And if the patients needed a simple request fulfilled, we did that. And then if there was nothing to do or it was break time, we would just hang out. And, if I may say, Baleen was a vision. Of course, I don't have a 40-year-old photograph, nor would I use it without her permission here. So this is just a stock image, but it really captures a lot of what my mind remembers about her. This is really how she kind of looks in my brain. She had this lovely complexion and those ocean blue eyes and blonde hair. She used to tell me that she washed her hair in lemon juice for color and texture. I don't know if that even works, but that's what she said. And she had a genetic hearing loss, and so you could hear it in the way she pronounced her consonants, and I found that very endearing. Her teeth were much too perfect for a 15-year-old. And yes, if I was 14 and she was 15, Bilene was an older woman. Scandalous. So our job was to run errands, and we were always taking the elevator. And one day that summer, we were both there, the door closed, we were going to whatever floor, and I noticed she was standing almost close enough to touch me, and I didn't move away. Next elevator ride, I stood a little closer to her. She did not move away. The next elevator ride, our shoulders were actually touching. I mean, there was some language going on physically between us, and of course, I couldn't wait for the next elevator ride where we actually kissed. And that moment was electric. I mean, I'm a 14-year-old kid. I'd never kissed anybody, although I'd had plenty of fantasies about doing so. I had no idea what I was doing. Am I doing this right? I was just, but it was amazing. It was electric. And it was just a few seconds of passion before the elevator door opened up. And then we went on to our jobs. And naturally, my next thought was, well, we need to run more errands. We need to run as many errands as humanly possible. This was how my mind was working at the time. But, when the summer finally ended, Baleen and I kind of went our separate ways. It's not like we really kept in touch. We didn't maintain a relationship. It was one of those summer lover type things. That kind of is what it is. But she will always be my first forever, for the rest of my life in my brain. She will always be my first. And that happened 4 decades ago. And it brings a lot of fond memories to my brain. But there's also been a dark side of young passions that happens whenever you are brought up in a culture of shame. In high control, fundy cultures, especially fundy religions, shame is a constant. You are there, you're at puberty or beyond puberty, you're a walking, talking, throbbing hormone supercharged with fantasies about physical touch, sensual touch, sexual touch. And on one hand, it feels natural and right and normal. And on the other hand, it feels carnal and sinful and wrong. And of course, in that hand, somebody places a Bible. I was 14 years old. I had already looked at a woman lustfully in my heart. According to the book of Matthew, I was already at 14 an adulterer. I had felt desires in my youth. 2 Timothy 2:22 said I was supposed to flee those desires. I was supposed to pursue righteousness. I had failed in righteousness. I was captivated by her eyes and her voice and her shape and her laugh, her mind, her heart, her person. And yet I had broken the command in Proverbs. I had lusted after her beauty and allowed her to captivate me with my eyes. Hardline Christianity had turned my personal, natural hetero attraction to females into a minefield. Now we stop in the live version in front of a crowd and say booby trapped because it just always gets a laugh. But minefield, right? I was just stepping over mines. Purity culture breeds dysfunction. It takes creatures of innate desire and it commands them not to desire. Well, how is this going to be done? The church says the first thing we have to do is to desexualize you. The first stop is to have people make a promise to God, and often to God's proxies. It could be a parent, usually the father figure, a pastor, some accountability partner. And of course, it's no accident that I have used a female in this slide. Abstinence programs like True Love Waits encourage young people to wear purity rings. This one says waiting for the one. By the way, Isaiah 40:31 talks about God renewing your strength because, of course, when you're weak, that's when you lust after the flesh. There are purity ceremonies or purity balls. These are occasions where they take these poor young girls and they dress them in actual wedding gowns. and they have them vow sexual chastity to God and often to their fathers. Here's a young girl at a purity ball. She's actually signing a stay of virgin contract under the eyes of her dad. Christian cultures actually call this dating your dad. And if you're ready for the veins to pop out of your face, check out this ABC Nightline video from a few years ago. They did a report on purity culture and purity balls. Check this out.
Meanwhile, Ron has a special gift for Caroline before they all head to the ball.
I'm ready for you, dear. You look lovely. Well, you are growing up before your daddy's eyes.
I've lost the audio.
One of the things that you were talking to Daddy about was
we can hear it.
I'm going to get my purity ring.
There you go.
You're good.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is important for us to remember is this is your desire to do it the Lord's way, to really save yourself from kissing lots of toads along the way and wait for your Prince Charming to come along. And he's got to pass through your dad. And Dad's got to put the stamp of approval on him because dads are really smart and can separate princes from toads really well. Let me show you the ring that I got for you here. And when somebody comes along who is ready and has the proper character and will treat you like a queen, then that's the guy that passes the test. And until then, this is just a reminder. Keeping yourself pure is important. And so you keep that on your finger, and it's a daily reminder that you're, at this point, you're married to the Lord, and your father is your boyfriend, and we're going to have fun together.
Even as a grown woman, she is supposed to remain accountable, not just to God, but in this case, to her father, right? Even as a grown woman, even after she becomes 18, 19, 20, 25, she's supposed to submit her choices to dad for approval. And of course, this is controlling, it's misogynistic, it's very culty. If you think that's culty, check this out. This is an actual image from a purity ball. They are bowing in front of an actual cross so the girls can kneel in submission before God or Jesus. Okay, next up, cover up. That ought to fix things. This is actually an illustration from the WikiHow page, how to dress modestly. Now, notice how the uncovering of the woman's shoulders causes lust, but if you grab that fabric and move it up over the shoulders, wow, lust just magically goes away. All sin is prevented. Of course, women have to be the gatekeepers for preventing lust and sin. The Apostle Paul, not exactly an egalitarian, commanded women, I want you to dress modestly with decency and propriety. When I was a kid, in my fourth grade year, I attended the ACE Christian school in my city, accelerated Christian education, very culty. It's like the Institute for Basic Life Principles, which was featured recently in the Amazon documentary Shiny Happy People. And this is the kind of stuff that was in our lesson plans. You see the young girl, she looks in the mirror. Oh, looks nice, looks good. Wait a minute. In the third frame, the skirt is above her knees. No, too little to wear. I must look right always. So if you can distill this kind of programming down into bullet points, Christian purity culture is teaching this. Don't think like a slut. Don't dress like a slut. Don't be a slut. And don't be tempted by the slut. And of course, who's the target for most of these instructions? Yes, it is the female. The perception has long been that men, much more than women, are sexually activated visually. So we have to mute what men see. By the way, some neuroscientists are really challenging this claim that men are primarily visual while women are not. The National Academy of Sciences published an article 4 years ago saying that both men and women, both male and female brains, respond to visual stimuli in very similar ways. There's other research that says male primates more than females rely on visual cues. for choosing a mate that is reproductively fit. So I don't think it's controversial to observe that most male primates, including the human primate, lead with the eyes. However, as higher self-aware primates, we do not have to be slaves to our amygdala. David Michael Buss is an American evolutionary psychologist. He is an expert in human sex differences in mate selection, and he makes this necessary point. A scientific description of evolved behaviors is not the same as a moral prescription for that behavior. We know that not every evolved trait is going to be a civilized or moral one. And so we have evolved the ability to understand and then override old programming. In other words, we can experience and acknowledge the evolutionary triggers that draw the eyes toward a beautiful person while choosing not to engage in objectification, obsession, or predation. Now, this stuff gets really complicated, but with exceptions, it is true that visually oriented primate males are primed also for aggression and dominance behaviors. This model often sees those male behaviors excused, dominance behaviors expected, while females are subjugated, blamed, and shamed. And this thinking often starts with fundy religions. If you think I'm exaggerating, just open the first part of the Bible to the book of Genesis. The story of Christianity starts with this attitude. Eve is produced as a byproduct of Adam, right? Man was not created for woman, but woman for man. She's subordinate. Eve tempted Adam to eat the forbidden fruit. And how did God punish Eve? He punished her sexually. I will surely expand your pain in your pregnancy. In pain you will bear children, and against your husband will be your desire, but he should rule over you. God made childbirth excruciating, and she would have what's known as Eve's curse. Her husband would rule over her, and if he ever turned her on, that desire was part of that curse. It's bizarre, almost as if the story was written by men. Lilith. She is mentioned only one time in the Bible, but ancient Babylonian tradition and some Christian tradition know Lilith as the first wife of Adam. She came before Eve, if you'll pardon the expression. She was a confident woman. She was sexually liberated. She knew what she wanted. She took what she wanted. Certainly not a submissive woman. Way too independent for God and for Adam. So, according to tradition, she was cast out of the garden as a demonic seducer. And this would create a vacuum that made way for the submissive Eve. And then we go throughout other Bible stories. Delilah, she seduced and betrayed Samson. His life was destroyed when she cut his hair, which stole his divine strength. The alluring Jezebel convinced King Ahab to worship the false god Baal and kill the prophets of Yahweh. The book of Revelation has a female destroyer. She is adorned in gold and pearls, riding a scarlet beast, holding a cup filled with what? Filled with fornication. She is the mother of harlots, the whore of Babylon. Even the Christian apocalypse myth has an adorned female seductress bringing destruction unto mankind. Women are the sirens. They beckon men into calamity. Fundy Islam has a ton of this kind of thing. By the decree of men, women are to be covered up. So we victim blame them. We desexualize them so they will not be abused. And I have to clarify something quickly. I've used the word desexualize quite a few times. This is ironic, I think, because the effect is the opposite. The more you target someone and say, we're not going to objectify you, we're not going to sexualize you, you are actually producing objectification and sexualization. The more people are trying to put people in a box, the more they reveal those people as objects set apart. That's how the world thinks about them. They're working against themselves. The more they target, especially females with modesty sermons, the more they are sexualizing females. Now, here's an alarming but kind of amusing example out of the Mormon church. This is a clip from a music video from several years ago. It was shown at something called a Youth Standards Night for the LDS Church. These guys took the One Direction song, "You Don't Know You're Beautiful," and they retooled the lyrics. Protect your brain if you can, but watch this little piece of cringe.
Don't peek, young man. We keeping it virtuous, baby.
Dressing modest, we know it's rough. When the world is making it so tough.
Right.
Don't need short skirts or low-cut shirts.
Low-cut shirts.
Being the way that you are is enough.
That's right, baby.
Everyone else doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
Everyone else but you.
Baby, you light up the world like nobody else. By the way that you speak and respect yourself. Girls with integrity are hard to find these days. You gotta know, you are so beautiful. If only you saw what I can see, you'd understand why I need your modesty. Right now I'm talking to you and you must believe. You gotta know. Virtue is so beautiful. That's what makes you beautiful.
I think somebody's going to need to rescue Glenda Jordan. I think she actually pulled her own eardrums out of her. I just saw it through the little window. I mean, I'm so sorry to do that to you, but did everybody catch it? Did you catch it? You'd understand why I need your modesty. Does that sound suspiciously rapey to anybody else? Cover up, ladies. I need you to cover up. You're the gatekeeper for how I think and what I do. You know, at the very least, it is saying women are responsible for how men act and react in a sexual way. Purity culture's obsession with women, I think, primes males in ways that they don't even realize. And understand that I'm not generalizing all young men into a predator category. And I was a victim of purity culture. I wasn't a freaking predator. I was a victim, like so many others. And I think we often try to shoehorn dudes into, oh my God, they're all creeps kind of a thing. And that's just not fair and it's not true. But we do see it happen far too often. But males are desexualized and blamed and shamed, and they take purity pledges, and they sort of get trapped in that repent, rinse, receipt sort of cycle. Boys brainwashed for dominion. This is an actual parent training guide. This is targeted specifically to dads who are raising young men. It is produced by Focus on the Family. That's James Dobson's outfit out of Colorado. It's written by a minister. This is a guidebook for fathers to raise a, quote, modern day knight. And of course, knights have to wear armor. So if you read the Bible, the armor of God, you've got the helmet of salvation. And you've got the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the feet or shoes of peace, the belt of truth, and the sword of the Spirit. And speaking of the sword of the Spirit, I was sent this video of a Christian man who is literally wielding his sword of the Spirit. This is Storehouse Church in Jasper, Alabama. Okay. Beyond the fact that he almost decapitates his pastor, you can see the screenshot. I mean, the tip of that sword is really close. That's a penis, right? I mean, we all know what he's doing. That is a projection of male virility, fierceness, and just banging power. And this thinking dominates Fundy cultures. There are rites of passage, there are tests of virtue, there are sacred oaths. You go on holy quests. He's a man on a mission, right? He's a crusader in God's army. The 1990s saw this, the Promise Keepers movement. This was a revival specifically targeted to men, with tens of thousands of people at a time building massive football stadiums for the purpose of committing themselves to what they thought was godly manhood. And the model was something like this. If you're a man, you are the authority in the home. You're the final word. The women are under your submission. Hetero marriage only, so man and woman. And of course, it is a man's man, a muscular brand of Christianity, right? And this is what men are supposed to teach the young men, the boys, husbands, fathers, etc. Be strong, be solid, be masculine. Now, we're not talking about masculinity, I think, in the healthy and normal sense. Masculinity itself is wonderful. It is part of the human condition. But in the hierarchy model, that many Christian cultures adhere to, we're talking about toxic masculinity, which is something different. And this goes far beyond religion, but we certainly see it in fundamentalist Christianity and Islam, as young men are trained into distorted notions of what it means to be a man. Ask the women in your life about the mansplainers, right? Ask them about the chauvinism that they see all the time, and this idea to be objectified and dominated by dudes. Sexist guys, unfortunately, are everywhere. How many boys and men are terrified of being called what they have been taught is one of the worst insults in the world? Hey, you're so gay, you fag, you queer, right? Because gay men aren't true men. And again, this thinking goes well beyond religion. I've heard it in atheist cultures. Here's something that happens to me, and it's happened more than once. I will have somebody appear on the comment section of a show or a video, something that I post publicly online, and they'll say something lovely. I love Seth's voice. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for that. Made my day. You are so appreciated. But no, they can't leave it there. They have to follow up with no homo. How insecure is that statement, right? Because they perceive non-hetero men as not actual men, or if they give me a compliment, they're so insecure that they think that it's some sort of invitation to have sex, which tells me a lot about how they perceive compliments to women, because I doubt they're not apologizing for those. No, we talk about men back in the day, male power, That was a man's man, muscular and sweaty and brutal, primal man. Okay, great, wonderful. That's male power. I also like to remind these people about masculine power as related by other types of men who litter our history books. Hello, right? The pharaohs and other manly Egyptians, the famous kings of old, our first president, and many of our founding fathers. People are going after drag queens as evil. And yet look at the men of our past, of the global past. It's just crazy. Anyway, then there's the whole men don't cry thing. And this conflates healthy human vulnerability with weakness. I heard this a lot from people I was raised with, not so much in my own family, but, I'll give you something to cry about. Suck it up, walk it off, be a man. And then the grunting displays of quote unquote noble aggression, where you settle things with your fists. I'll see you in the parking lot, lock and load, to show them who's the man. We saw this recently with the senator from my home state of Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen. He's mad at a Teamster president. They're in a Senate hearing. And what does he do? He says, hey, man, you want to go get your butt up out of the chair? We'll have it out right now. And Bernie Sanders has to tell him, sit your ass down. You're not going to fight in the Senate chamber hall. You're not going to turn these proceedings into a midnight bar fight, right? But there's a lot of that out there. You want to go, son? I'll whoop your ass like it's, like patting for a dance, right? and I think many of these male assertions of physical power are often sexual. It's like the guy with the sword. We have people like this, right? This, I think, sums up many people's notions of biblical manhood. You mark your territory, you puff out your chest, you give them the 1,000-yard stare, and you extend your penis with a firearm or a sword or something like that. I've noticed how so many of the insults targeted to women are degrading sexual slurs. In your own mind, make a list of the most popular insults that are hurled at men and the popular insults that are hurled at women. The ratio, not even close. Even beyond religion, women valued and devalued sexually first. Another example of the double standard. This is not news to you, probably, but a man has a lot of sex partners. He's a playboy. He's a ladies' man. A woman with a lot of sex partners, she's a slut and a whore and a tramp and a bimbo, right? And I've heard both men and women talk like this. And I think religions are guilty of priming people to do so. What about good people who struggle through the indoctrination of sexual stereotypes? They're overwhelmed by it all. The naming and the blaming and the shaming, the control, and this idea that they have to submit themselves in every way to an authority with a capital A. I'm sure there are many people watching right now who are familiar with the concept of church discipline. This insidious scenario has people of all ages reporting their moral failures to the pastor, the deacons, the whole congregation. If it's discovered that you had sex outside of marriage, or you had an affair, or you were watching porn, or you're not hetero, or whatever, pastors and parents can drag you before an entire church body, and they have you confess and repent and then promise you'll never do it again. And then they inform you you are being watched. You will be held accountable. And this is where things get tricky, because I'm not talking about accountability in the healthy sense. Let's say you're struggling with addiction or something and you need someone else that you can lean on when you feel weak. I don't think that's accountability. That's community, I think, more than accountability. No, I think my version of accountability I'm speaking about here is much more Orwellian. Somebody else is made aware of your most personal thoughts and struggles so that they can keep you on the straight and narrow. They can help you pray away the weakness and intercede for you to God, and also to surveil and report. We heard a lot about this kind of thing recently with the new Speaker of the House saying that he and his son both have the Covenant Eyes software on their computers. So if Mike Johnson ever watches porn, his son gets a notification. And if his son watches porn, old Mikey gets a notification. I was so creeped out by this story. And it also, I think, betrays why they would have to have the software there anyway. The only reason they have Covenant Eyes installed, I think, is because they are secretly, and maybe not so secretly, really, 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 really wanting to watch porn. Anyway, how far do some churches take this kind of thing? Check this out, and this is absolutely true. A friend of mine attended a church in my hometown, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the pastor did a whole sermon about sexual purity. And there was a section just about masturbation. And he targeted that part of the sermon only to the men, because only men masturbate. Yeah, we all know that's just a bunch of crap. Anyway, all right, so the pastor's talking to the guys, and he's saying, let's say you are tempted to shake hands with the bishop. Okay, let's say you have that. In order to prevent that, the pastor assigned them masturbation partners. And by the way, this is why you should never pose for stock photographs, because I pull this off of the internet. These poor guys who pose for this picture for some marketing thing have no idea what I've just done to them. But anyway, I'm sorry to them, but it's a great, all right. I did not do a casting call for masturbators. This is a stock image. But the idea is you are feeling the inclination to engage in the devil's handshake. And you realize you are lusting. God is watching. We can't have that. How do I resist these fantasies and physical feelings? I call up a buddy and I confess. And apparently, this is supposed to produce in me a cold shower effect, right? If I pray with a partner, I will not go and punch the munchkin. That's the whole thinking. All right. So, of course, this is insanity, but it is also genius. If you can control somebody's sexual identity, you have the whole person. You have who they are, what they think, how they live, who they love, if they self-love. By the way, you have not lived until you have Google searched Victorian era masturbation preventions. These devices are horrifying. Physicians at the time were warned that masturbation led to, not just sexual sin, that was part of it, but physical problems. You could become mentally ill, you could get a disease, you could even die from jerking off. So in the 1800s, doctors and priests would prescribe these penis torture chambers. And if you ever almost had an erection, these were designed to discourage such a reaction. You would be bent and grabbed and poked and speared. And there were plenty of these targeted to women as well. Okay, we've already established now that God likes to watch. God likes to watch. Biblical sex is always a threesome. We know this. How sadistic is the God model for human sexuality? Let's say puberty strikes at 12 years old. The median age for marriage in this country is about 30. So that would be 18 years where any sex would be premarital sex. That's 18 years of activated innate sexuality that people are told to suppress. Almost 2 decades at war with the body that God intelligently designed to sexually activate early. But wait, according to the Bible, there's a remedy for that. But if they cannot control themselves, according to 1 Corinthians, they should marry, for it is better to marry than burn with passion. If you don't think you can hold off, get married as soon as you can. And how many very, very young people jump into the marriage bed because they were sold the lie that physical intimacy was illegitimate unless they picked somebody and signed the papers. For many, the honeymoon night is a nightmare. You go in, you're terrified, you've been taught nothing of value about yourself or your partner. You feel dirty and carnal, even though this is supposed to be godly sex. And intimate moments that are supposed to be exciting and amazing become scary and awkward and traumatizing. Purity couples literally fumbling in the dark, literally feeling their way, sometimes really realizing far too late that they're not even compatible. But now they're committed. They're locked in, right? They're trapped, disappointed, depressed, and miserable. Let's say the legal age of marriage in your state is 18. Let's call it 18. How much did you know about yourself when you were 18? Barely out of high school, if that. You haven't gone to college, if that's what you want for yourself. If you had a job, it almost certainly wasn't a career, not at 18. You hadn't navigated any adult relationships. How in the world are you supposed to know anybody else when you're still being introduced to yourself? Gone is the chance to take your time and test the waters and figure things out beyond the cocoon of youth. Lost is the chance to learn and grow and mature through experience. The law says you're ready. The pre-marriage counselors and the workshops said you were ready. The pastor at the podium said you're ready, but you were not ready. And then comes the joy of Christian marriage counseling. Some outsider comes in, and almost always, what do they say? It's a spiritual issue, pray together. Study the Bible, study God's word, open up, submit more, often in the bedroom. Try harder in the bedroom. You need to do more. All of this communicating that the problem is quite possibly you. In many churches, they have divorce recovery programs, and divorce is often treated with genuine compassion, and it really is. But it still brings a stigma. If you believe in a soulmate, how could you take a second spouse if the first spouse was the soulmate? But wait a minute, maybe the second spouse was the soulmate. So you committed adultery by taking the wrong person in the first instance. It's just crazy. And we all know the hard line that the Bible takes on divorce, right? It's a spiritual problem. When you and I know often it's another problem, maybe a compatibility problem. What if it's a safety problem? I am not safe with this person. I need to get out. The Bible said, that's a sin against man and God. I think perhaps most ironic is the reality that many of the most holy rollers preaching against unbiblical sex so often get caught with their own freaking pants down. Have you noticed? Everywhere, from the corner church to the mega church, we got people preaching from God's house, while their own house has a closet full of skeletons, right? And then come the mea culpas. I was weak. Oh, I was weak and I was in the flesh. They caught me with porn. This is how Jimmy Swaggart sounds, by the way. Is he still alive? I don't know, Jimmy Swaggart. He's the one I always go to in my brain. Him and Ted Haggard. They caught me. I was caught with an affair. I was caught with a same-sex partner in a seedy motel. I was exposed and discovered banging something that wasn't my Bible. I'm so sorry. I submit myself to all of you in the name of Jesus. And then they take some time to get their family in order, and then they come back and pick up right where they left off. I'm reminded there's this great quote by Christopher Hitchens in his autobiography, Hitch 22. He said, whenever I hear some big mouth in Washington or the Christian heartland banging on about the evils of sodomy or whatever, I mentally enter his name in my notebook and contentedly set my watch. Sooner rather than later, he will be discovered down on his weary and well-worn old knees in some dreary motel or latrine with an expired Visa card, having tried to pay well over the odds to be peed upon by some Apache transvestite. Now, beyond the forked tongues of the do as I say crowd, I think it's remarkable that whole generations have been convinced to hand over the keys to their private thoughts and desires, attractions, choices, partners, relationships, families, their whole lives. So many of us were trained to bow and comply. We didn't realize at the time that we had every right to square our shoulders and tell these people, this is not any of your business. And even those who logically accept this still struggle in their hearts. It's understandable, that struggle after a lifetime of being told how to live by somebody else. If I myself could get in a time machine and I could talk to the young Seth Andrews, who was still in the faith, a teenage Seth Andrews, a student leader in Christian school who was wrestling with purity and immoral thoughts and all those types of things, I would have a lot of advice for the young me. And some of this might relate and ring true for you as well. My first piece of advice to the young me would be this: do not take sex ed from clergy. These people, if you'll pardon the expression, know fuck all about sex. The second piece of advice I would give myself is, I would say, you need to know that purity culture is a failure. It constantly fails. It is kidding itself. Purity culture and abstinence programs have been studied. The Journal of Adolescent Health reported that simply saying to kids, you need to cross your legs and be pure, this does not delay sex. It doesn't reduce risky behaviors. It's a trespass on the individual. It fuels dangerous ignorance. It stigmatizes young people. It reinforces harmful gender stereotypes. And it makes the problems of unwanted pregnancies and STDs even worse. And the fact that many purity culture parents and pastors are sincere, they genuinely, sincerely are trying to teach and protect children. Their sincerity does not mean they know what the hell they're talking about. Sometimes they're downloading the same dysfunction into their kids that was downloaded into them. Next up, I would tell my young self to realize how much of purity culture is really about control. Christianity says it's about freedom. Jesus wants to set you free. It's all about freedom. But if you read the Bible and you truly sort of reverse engineer the Christian doctrine, the fundamentals of the faith, this is about surrender. What are we surrendering? We surrender the self. He must increase, but I must decrease. We all seen the posters, the memes, the t-shirts. Die to me, I must die to myself. More of Jesus, less of me. I must surrender all. I surrender everything. What am I surrendering? Myself. Unless you think that the modern church is not still infected with this stuff, allow me to introduce you to this little piece of work. She's a podcaster, author, and influencer. On Instagram, her name is Allie B. Stuckey, and she posted this helpful little sermonette in March of last year.
Okay, I know I probably sound like a broken record to a lot of you, but because this is a message that keeps on showing up in Christian women's circles, I feel like I need to say it again. You are not enough. You're not enough. Nowhere does the Bible say that you are sufficient. Nowhere does the Bible say that you're perfect the way you are. And that is good news. It's actually great news. You know why? Because you're not enough. You never will be, but Jesus is.
This woman has hundreds of thousands of followers on the internet, and it's terrifying. She has given herself permission to say this to people. Purity culture has given itself permission to say this stuff, but they do not have permission unless we grant it. The next advice to my young self would be this: Seth, it's okay to do some solo runs. In this country, 92% of men and 76% of women self-pleasure. No, you're not going to ruin yourself or your partner or shred the moral fabric of society. Jesus is not up there taking Polaroids for Judgment Day. You're not going to go blind or grow hair on your palms. They used to teach this to kids. Maybe they still do. If you masturbate, you're going to have hairy palms and you're going to go blind, right? It's just one of those things. It's your body. It's natural. It's normal. It feels good. It can relax you. It's a great way to gain confidence as you get to know your own body. The next piece of advice I would give would be have fun with it. I'm not really an adventurous type, but if you are, explore that space on your own terms. And if some clucking conservative church hen starts to judge you for role-playing and costumes and kink and a closet full of toys, just look them in the eye and assure them that your trip to the adult store boosts capitalism. Just drop the word capitalism every time you see it. But Jesus loves capitalism. MAGA, American, conservative, fundy, purity culture Christians love capitalism. So just throw that one out. The next piece of advice I would give myself, it's totally counter to what I was taught growing up, but it's absolutely good. Have premarital sex, Seth. Sexual compatibility or incompatibility should not be a honeymoon surprise. How in the world do you make a sexual commitment to somebody without sexual experience? How can you pledge to a partner when you fully don't know your partner? And here's another tip that my Christian counselors would have hated: live together. I'm convinced you can never truly know somebody until you live under the same roof with them. The chemical high of infatuation finally starts to wane. It's no longer just harps and roses and, oh, they're the perfect person and we never fight. And, you get a good long look at each other from behind closed doors and the veneer comes off. People are raw and unfiltered, sometimes for worse, often for better. Sometimes there's a real intimacy with being able to share yourself when you are not camera ready. You get to show somebody else the part of you that is really the most raw and vulnerable. But if it's not going to work, that's information you need, and you will find it out only by sharing a space with someone else for a long period of time. I would tell myself you don't have to sign a piece of paper to be a family. You don't have to be married to have family. No piece of paper determines it. No document, no religion has to sanction it. No father, mother, pastor, priest, politician, doctrine, or authority can invalidate it. And if anyone ever tries to invalidate your family, however you frame it, just say, nope, access is denied to you. You do not have my permission. You are not the admin of my life's page. And once I adjusted my own perception on this, and I learned about boundaries and how it's okay, the boundary line is mine to draw, I became liberated. It just opened up my world. And this permission structure can apply to our whole freaking lives. You don't like my interests, you don't agree, you don't like my clothing, my language, my career choices, sexual orientation, friends, partners, lack of partners, the choice to get married, not get married, have kids, not have kids. You don't like my politics or philosophies, religion, rejection of religion. That bothers you, that grieves you. You've got a problem with that. Well, let me call Whine 111 and we'll get the wambulance here and you can go take a nice long ride. I know it's not always easy with the people we care about, but it applies. If you're not comfortable with who I am, that's not I. And understanding that was liberating for me. I would encourage my young self to get some actual science-based sex education. Find out what the body's doing. How does the body act and react? What are the hormones about? What's going on there? I would learn about organs and orgasms, forms of contraception, protecting against unwanted pregnancy and STDs, setting and observing the boundaries of consent, right? Actual sex ed. I would tell my younger self to embrace the human spectrum of legitimate love in this world. Stop trying to put everybody in your box, Seth. Cast off all that judgment and open up your heart. It did. It opened. When I finally cast off the judgment and I wasn't threatened by people who didn't love the way I loved, it just opened me up. It opened my heart and mind. It liberated my world. I wasted decades in bigotry. I wish I had gotten to the point I am today much sooner. And then finally, I would say, Beline was a gift. She was a gift. Those precious, passionate seconds alone together in the elevator. Cherish those moments. Cherish the memory. Embrace it. Enjoy it. Lean into it. Savor the moments. What happened to you was perfectly normal, and it was the beginning of a natural and wonderful journey, a big part of feeling truly alive. Now, I know many who have been watching can relate to some of what I've said, and it's possible that purity culture has really damaged you, and maybe you still bear those scars, perhaps even some open wounds. Maybe in some ways you feel like damaged goods. So let me leave you with this. No matter how much Bible the moralists and the Puritans throw your way, remember how wrong the Bible has been about everything else. Wrong about biology, cosmology, geology, meteorology, prophecy, history, morality, equality, humanity. Why would we ever expect the Bible to be right about sex? Christian purity culture is built on a Bible written by anonymous, primitive, sexist men who probably couldn't find the clitoris with GPS. And the ultimate act of emancipation is to look this culture of control in the face and say, no, you stop right there. You do not get to decide how I should feel, what I should think, where I should go, who I should choose, or how I should live. My sexuality, my identity, my person, my choices, my relationships, my boundaries, my life, those belong to me. And if by chance you're ever out on the street and you bump into evangelist Allie B. Stuckey, and she tries to tell you that you are not enough, have a little conversation with her. Just look at her and say, you know, Allie, you look tense. My recommendation to you would be drive home, go into your bedroom, dim the lights, turn on some soft music, and go fuck yourself. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you very much.
I love that. That is a great note to end on. I'm
Go
taking
fuck
that one
yourself,
with me.
Seth, by the way. Go fuck yourself.
I receive that. I receive your wisdom in the Lord.
In the Lord. That's great. Everyone can use that advice if they
Yes.
would like to. Well,
For
I
sure.
love that. That was awesome, Seth. You hit on a lot of really good points there, and we have some questions if you have time for a little bit of Q&A.
Well, sure, I'd
but
be honored.
Outstanding. And before we go to that, where can people find you if they want more content from you? We've had a lot of people saying that they want to fall asleep to you talking and they need more podcast content. So not because you're boring, but because your voice is very soothing.
No, it's funny. When someone says, oh, I fall asleep every night to your voice, it's always like, okay, I'm not sure. I'll take it as a compliment, but
Seth,
all right,
I
yeah.
want you to make me a bedtime meditation when I have anxiety, and I'm like, oh, it's Seth making me feel good.
No, I'll
You
do it,
are
yeah.
you're it gives me all the good feelings. So
Just over and over, I'll just say, enhance your calm.
that's
Your
right.
calm.
Exactly. Find your zen.
Yes. Best way to find me is, well, there are a few hubs. I host the Thinking Atheist community and podcast. I am not the Thinking Atheist. I'm not a great thinker. I came out of a faith culture. And so the Thinking Atheist icon is really a reminder that we reject faith and want to pursue reason. Let's think about the things that we are presented with. And so that's what that is. TheThinkingAtheist.com. My own personal website is SethAndrews.com, and there's links to all the stuff I'm doing. But I would love for people to check out my second podcast, TrueStoriesPodcast.com. Anybody old enough to remember the old ABC News Paul Harvey Rest of the Story broadcast? These were 5 a day or 5 a week. Paul Harvey would take a few minutes and just spin a yarn. He would tell you a true story. And then at the end, he would pull the rug out from underneath you or surprise you in some way. And I think, he passed away like 15 years ago, and no one was really doing this sort of short form 5 to 8 minute vignette with a kicker. And so I decided, well, maybe in the spirit of Paul Harvey, I would resurrect the format. Mine's a little bit different. It's my own signature style, but it's a kick. It is so much fun to do. And there's no religion, no politics. So you can listen to it with your kids, with your, religious grandma, whoever, everybody can play along. You can just search it on all major podcast apps, True Stories with Seth Andrews.
I have listened to it, and it's very good. I've
Very
really enjoyed it, Seth. It is wonderful. So I highly recommend it to all of our wonderful listeners. Do you have anything new coming up for the new year that you would like to shill for yourself that's coming up for 2024, or that's it?
I think right now I'm trying to budget out a couple of weeks to just be. I don't know about you guys, but one thing about being an activist is I think we don't do anything halfway. And I think we are so engaged with the world, with the culture, with the insanity of humanity that I think we tend to burn that candle at both ends. And really, I've really found myself like how I don't know, I look at the state of the state. I look at the insanity of humanity. I look at the rise of the hate and the bigots and the Christian nationalists and the world on fire and the Middle Eastern headlines, and I become overwhelmed. And you add all of that in with the type of activism that we do, and I think it's self-care becomes hard. So I've made a pact with myself that I'm going to try to front load a lot of December's content and actually take the last half of the month and be a husband and be a father to Linus and Gracie and Kat, decompress and kick off 2024 with kind of a breath of fresh air. So nothing major on the horizon, just a little self-care. That's all I'm doing.
I love that. That is such a good idea. And that's come up before. We had an episode last year, I think it was, with Objectively Dan talking about something very similar to what you're describing, Seth, of the need to make some space to not feel like you have to constantly be fighting everything at all times without ever taking a break. So I'm glad that you brought that up, especially.
That is one of my 2024 resolutions, is to take a breather. I've actually started writing poetry again, which is something that I put on the back burner for the past couple of years. Not for anybody else, just for myself. That I can kind of just take some time to take a step back for me and not feel like I have to fight the world's ills all the time. So
I think part of that journey is also choosing my battles. Years ago, I would engage everybody who I stumbled over, every pebble on social media. I would just stop what I was doing and be like, oh, that's not going to stand. Oh, yeah, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And before you know it, I end up in these swirling eddies that I didn't ever get out of. And what did I accomplish, right? Who was my interlocutor? Were they operating in good faith? Did they just want attention? Were they a troll? Was that the right forum to have those conversations? And I had to go back and actually put together kind of a little bullet point list before I engaged. Like, is this worth hitting the brakes on the important work to go and squabble with some anonymous whoever on Twitter who might not be even remotely interested in a conversation? Maybe they're feeding off of my oxygen, or maybe I should go and just correct the record, make a statement, do my thing, and then get on with my day and not feed them beyond that. There are a lot of these sort of nuanced conversations, I think, that need to happen. And being able to partition those off and not take every piece of bait that was thrown at me, that's liberated me. It has liberated me, my heart, my mind, my schedule. It's been amazing. So.
Ooh, I love that. Not taking the bait is definitely something I'm working on too. And it's tough, but that is probably very much quality of life enhancing. So thank you for bringing that up.
But someone would be wrong on the internet, Cara.
I know. I bet they are. This is why you don't see me on Facebook very much. It gives me hives. But
all right, let's move to Q&A.
Yeah, I agree. So we've got a few questions here. Helen, do you want to start us off with a question?
Absolutely. So we have the first question we have is, do you think watching porn is healthy, or cybersex? Do you think porn addiction is an actual problem that might exist for some people?
I had this conversation recently with Dr. Marty Klein, who is an actual expert in sex. He's a sex therapist. He actually teaches sex therapists. We did a broadcast about nanny software. I think that released last month. And then I spoke to another, oh God, I can't remember his name. I'm blanking at the moment, but he's also an expert. Darrel Ray knows who he is, who was talking about how if someone is diagnosed with sex addiction, and that is not in the diagnostic and statistical manual, there is no such thing as sex addiction. Largely what we're seeing is another condition, and what they're doing with pornography or sex or whatever is actually a smaller part of a different problem. I don't myself think that sex addiction is a thing. I think there are other types of maybe compulsive behaviors, and the sex might be reflected in that. But I just think it's situational. If sex is not cheating your partner of attention toward them, if it's not a substitute for them, if it doesn't keep you from dealing with perhaps some intimacy issues in your own life, if it becomes kind of a retreat that causes you to close a door or someone to close a door against you, I mean, why not? There are a lot of couples who watch it together. And I think it's also important for people to understand that porn is not sex ed. Porn is theater, porn is fantasy, and they have to frame it in that way. This idea that, sex and porn is like, who was it who said, and if you got sex ed from porn, all you would learn is how quickly the plumber shows up to fix the toilet. Like you just immediately show up and say, I'm here. Right. It's like that scene out of the Big Lebowski. The guy shows up to fix the cable, right? Carl Hungus.
Yeah.
I just think it's situational. I think it's situational, and I think it's a healthy expression for a great many people who enjoy it. Find what rings your bell and do that.
Yeah, great answer. And I know Dr. Ray has spoken on that a few times as well. And he's mentioning in the chat, I think the other person you're thinking of, in addition to Dr. Klein, was David Lay.
Thank you. Yes. Ley, David Lay,
Mhm.
which is a great name for a sex therapist. Great name.
It is. It is a great name.
It makes you wonder if that's his real name or is that a stage name? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, okay. Speaking of resources for people who want to learn more, that is actually what our second question is about that we got. Someone says, I was homeschooled by Christian conservative parents and wasn't given a sex education. Where do you recommend that adults read or watch to learn about sex? Do you have any other resources you'd like to mention?
Boy, I'd like to lean on the shoulders or stand on the shoulders of actual experts, the giants. I would rather refer someone to like Sex and God by Dr. Darrel Ray, the Secular Therapy Project, where they can actually speak to someone about these issues, someone who is actually trained. I think a lot of it, though, it's an exercise where we have to stop and become aware of how much of what we think was trained into us. Why did I come to that conclusion? Where did that originate? Who's enforcing that? Who set that rule, and why am I obeying it?
Mhm.
And I think being self-aware is a great first step. I'm also struck by how subjective the moral rules are as set up by other people. We had this conversation this week on the show. I'm just digressing. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you invite a radio host to
This is
yammer on.
great.
We were
You
talking
can
about
listen to his radio show and listen to that episode.
who came up with, like, on regular television. Natalie and I are watching this show that I can't defend because it's just trash television, but it's called Botched, and it's streaming on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
It's about these people who spend $50 and go to Tijuana for a boob job. And I'm like, what in the hell were you thinking? And of course, their bodies get completely screwed up. And then they end up at these Beverly Hills doctors who have to go and try to fix it. And they'll sometimes go and show the surgery, and they'll show the incision, and they show all around the breast and everything. But the nipple is blurred, like this tiny, tiny, tiny spot. And I remember watching going, we're all adults here. Who determined that the nipple had to be like, you can show the top, the side, the bottom, but just the areola? Well, like, who came up with that rule? I wrote about this in my last book, Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. We talk about somebody somewhere decided that that's the part that might arouse you. Okay, well, what if the top of the breast arouses you? What if you're a leg guy? What if it's eyes, elbows? I mean, I just don't understand all of these weird moral rules. And the more we see how arbitrary they are and how they're obviously human made, often made by people, I think, who are betraying what they themselves fantasize about. If I see a pastor and he's always talking about masturbation, or he's always preaching against porn, or it's like Ted Haggard in Colorado preaching against homosexuals, watch those people very closely, because within about 5 minutes, you'll probably see them exposed as doing what they have been preaching against. I'm sorry, total bunny trail. find an expert, and Darrel Ray can help you. That's my answer.
Excellent answer. And
Yeah.
we also have our resources list that we mentioned earlier on in the program. There is a whole section of resources to do with sex that includes several previous RfRx talks, including some of the ones by Dr. Ray and some of the other people that you just mentioned who have spoken on this. So, okay, well, we've got a couple of more questions if we've got time.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll try to shorten the answers for you. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sure.
ahead.
No, you're doing great. This is your episode, so we're here to hear from you. So answer away. Let's see. Helen, is it you or me?
It's me. I've been reading about how modern purity culture comes into America from fascism via the efforts of Paul Papono. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. An atheist marriage counselor who is also a mentor to James Dobson. Calling purity culture fascism is a bit of an ad hominem without supporting arguments, but doesn't this historically observably change in Christian culture point to how religious doctrine is a product of evolution?
There
That
are
was a
three
lot.
different questions in there.
Yes.
Mhm.
Let's
Here's
There's
what
a
I'm gonna
lot.
do.
Yeah.
First of all, I do think we can trace a lot of American purity culture back to the Puritans who arrived on our shores and tried to implement their own extremely conservative brand of morality, quote unquote morality. And many of those moral codes and edicts do echo through the generations and I think affect and impact us today. I wouldn't call purity culture fascism. I would call it authoritarianism. You are told to submit to the authority, usually God and then God's proxy. As far as Christianity and evolution, I think all you have to do to believe in evolution or to accept it is to watch Christianity, which has had to evolve over the generations in order to survive, right? We've seen throughout Christianity, fundamentalist into moderate, into progressive churches. You'll find people who are trying to, the religion's having to evolve to stay relevant. The church bleeding listeners and viewers and congregants today, they're the fundy churches. And so they're moderating their message. They're evolving into a more egalitarian model in many cases to try to survive and thrive, to try to reproduce their genes. And that way, I do think that that Christianity and religions as a whole, those types of religions, have actually been proofs of evolution. They've had to evolve to survive.
Excellent answer. Okay. Well, let's go on to our last question. And this is a good one. And you've kind of answered this a little bit, but if you would like to expand more on it, this would be a good time. Do you have any advice for young people or anyone who is working to break out of a purity culture mindset on approaching relationships or physical intimacy?
You know, I've said this before. Even the most well-meaning parents in these situations will tell a child, you can grow up to be anything you want to be. And then many of them will commit the whole of their resources to limiting your options. They say, be what you want. The world is your oyster. Go out there and take things by the horns and just go, go, go. And then you say, well, I'd like to do this. And they're like, no. I want to go to college here. Oh, no, I want to skip college. Oh, that's a bad idea. What were you thinking? Oh, I want to marry this person, or I don't want to get married, or I'm in love with this person who's of a different race or a different or gender or same gender, or I'm politically or philosophically inclined to think this. My opinions are changing. I think I'm going to go vote over here. No, don't do that, right? They tell you you can be anything you want to be. But there's a part of many of these, certainly not all, but many of these more fundamentalist cultures where parents don't want to produce offspring. They want to replicate, right? They're not raising as much as they're replicating. They want you to be an echo of them. I want you to think like me. I want you to worship like me. I want you to love like me. I want you to vote like me. I want you to validate me. And I think my advice to anybody who comes out of that same culture that I did is to understand that we are all unique and individual. There is no one in this world, nor has there ever been or will be again, anyone who is like us. So if we are not authentic to ourselves, who else would be? I think we have a responsibility. I think the greatest gift we can give to ourselves is an authentic life. And the more other people try to put us in their cookie cutter, the more I think we become cognizant of what they're doing and realize I don't fit. I'm not in that shape. The mold doesn't work for me. I am going to give myself permission to find out, what do I think about these things? It's like when I came out of fundamentalist Christianity, right? I didn't know what evolution was, but I knew it was wrong. I never cracked Darwin on the origin of species, never read a word of it. I just knew it was all a lie. I didn't know what progressive, liberal humanists, secular humanists were, but I knew I'd never vote Democrat, better dead than Democrat, right? I knew all of these things without really knowing. They'd been trained into me. I was in somebody else's cookie cutter. And finally, when I walked away, I had to go back and look at all of these bullet points and say, well, what do I think about it? Well, what do I think about LGBT rights and gay marriage? What do I think about the death penalty? What do I think about the legalization of drugs? What do I think about healthcare and foreign policy and people of other faiths? What do I think about the climate and environmental issues and guns and all of these? I had to go point by point. And when I realized that I had permission not to try to jam it into somebody else's mold, not to be an echo of them, but I got to figure it out for me. When I gave myself the gift of authenticity, I realized that so many of my positions, values, philosophies, they were different, and that was okay. And I'd arrived at them organically on my own terms. And no one's going to guilt me out of them. No one's going to emotionally blackmail me to change them. No one's going to force my hand to adjust them. I'll listen to you, but ultimately, these are things that belong specifically to me. My advice would be to own that, understand that you are you. You are not an echo of someone else. And that authentic life is a gift that will give back to you every hour of every day for the rest of your life.
I love that. It's like I don't know how you answer so well off the top of your head. Like that was amazing.
Well,
we didn't tell you these questions ahead of time.
I'm all style, no substance. You know, I'm flashy. People like me for that reason, but no.
Well, I've had a lot of these conversations. Radio DJ training you've had.
Well, yeah. Well, you're very kind. I appreciate it. And it's an honor to be involved. Yeah. I'm not Yoda on this stuff. I just know that I think our journeys are often very similar. Those of us who've come out of different sort of high control cultures, we have a lot in common. And I may not be a great mind. I'm not a PhD type, but I'll tell you, I am an encourager. And I just want to encourage people, you know, life's short. You got we go around once. And so I really think it's not always easy, but man, once you open up yourself to value yourself and take the journey on your own terms, man, it's just Christmas. Every day's Christmas. And that's my hope for everybody.
Well, I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah, Helen, go ahead.
I was going to say, like I told you this before, but I'll tell you again that, you know, one thing I love about you is your kindness. You're always kind and your love of people, and the work that you do really shows. And I just want to, like, again, I know I tell you every time we talk, but I'm going to tell you again that that's one of the things I love about you. And thank you so much for being here again tonight. This was a group vote for you to do this talk. So, you know, I appreciate, you doing the talk as well on this particular topic. It is very much appreciated.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap up. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 2 more episodes this year of RfRx. Next week is Dr. Ben, formerly student
he's not
Dr.
a student
Ben.
anymore, Cara.
So Dr. Ben, talking about separation of church and hospital. And then the following week, we'll have our holiday celebration episode with Sarah St. Abaddon, celebrating Yule with Satan, the Krampus episode. So look forward to seeing y'all for those. And again, if you need more RfRx in your life between now and then, check us out on YouTube, Recovering from Religion, or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can listen to previous episodes that way. You can email us, as I mentioned before, at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And don't forget to check out the blog and the podcast. And Helen, where can people find us on the social media?
Okay, so all of you are social media well-versed people. I'm assuming so. You are living in the modern age. So we have a Facebook. So if you go on the Book of Faces and go to our main page, that is where some volunteers hang out and also talk about other things that are going on with RfR. We also have our support group page. So if you want to know more about support groups, or if you're actually looking for support and you would like something beyond like what we mentioned at the top of the show, up from beyond the online community, you have a particular issue or concern or thing you want to talk about, or you have questions about the support group, please go to the support group page. We are also on the artist formerly known as Twitter X, so do some twixing, I guess it's twixing now, I don't know, I'm not on that platform, it's a cesspool, but we're on there. So if you're on there and want to know more stuff about recovering from religion, go to our X channel. We are also on Instagram and we're also on TikTok. So if you want to get more recovering from religion, and also too, if you're on these platforms and you love recovering from religion, but you think that there's a wider community that you belong to that you can direct to our resources, please like, share, subscribe, ring bells. I don't know, do all the things that you're supposed to do, like do the heart thing and all that stuff. So do those things. Okay, now I'm going to read the exit poll. This poll is just give you a general idea of how you found out about us, how you felt about the talk. So I'm going to read the questions to you just to be polite, because we're nice people, and you're going to answer them. And we do this every close of the show, people. So give us the answers because it's helpful. So 1, this program was relevant to me. 1, oh my God, nope, it was not relevant to me. I don't know why I wanted to learn about purity culture. I am impure. I don't need this. 2, 5, yes, this was super helpful. I'm going to start masturbating on a regular basis. Everything is going to be great. So, and then 2 to 4, search your feelings. Maybe you need more purity culture, deconstructing from purity culture. Maybe you need less. I don't know. So, just give us an answer. Number 2, the speaker was clear and understandable. 1, oh my God, banana phone, tin cans, could not hear. I don't even know why I even attended this talk, because I needed smoke signals. It was that bad. Number 5, oh my God, it was like Seth was in the same room with me. I could understand him perfectly fine. 2 to 4, adjust your audio settings on your Zoom calls. Number 3, I will definitely attend future programs like this. 1, nope, awful, terrible. I don't know why I showed up. This was super dumb. I don't know why I'm here. 5, yes. Oh my God, this place is lovely. They're the most wonderful people on the internet here in the Zoom meeting. I will totally be back. 2 to 4, depends. Maybe it's topic. Maybe depends on who the hosts are. Again, search your feelings. And number 4, how did you find about RfRx tonight? 1, through the RfR online community Slack channel. Number 2, through our meetup events. Number 3, through Facebook, the artist formerly known as Twitter or Instagram, Discord, the RfR website, or a little birdie came and whispered into your ear that you had to join the RfRx talk tonight. So please fill those out. It is actually really helpful for us to get that feedback. So thank you for doing that. And now we will go to our wonderful founder, president, wonderful person, Dr. Darrel Ray, to talk about his feelings on tonight's talk and anything else he wants to pimp about RfR. So hi, Dr. Ray.
Hey, Helen. Seth, thanks again for being on here. And most of all, thank you for your support. You support us year in, year out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it seems like. And I can't tell you how many people have come to our chat line or our phone line and said, I heard about you from Seth Andrews' show. So you're probably one of the top 2 or 3 referrers to us. But anyway, just always want to say thank you. And I appreciate this particular subject, as you know, it's very near and dear to my heart.
Darrel, just letting you know, Seth did have to jet.
Yeah,
So
I
just wanted to check in case you kept trying to talk to him. He is gone.
Well, I just looked down and I saw, oh, he's gone. Then I realized, oh shit, I'm talking to nobody. But anyway,
just wanted to let you know.
He went to go be a supportive husband.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, all the rest of you heard that. Show Seth some love. Watch his shows. Text him. Tell him. You know, he appreciates we appreciate his support. And as Helen knows all too well, and many of our volunteers, Seth was super helpful and interested and supportive of us in our last fundraiser last year. And we're going to be doing another fundraiser coming up pretty soon. And I'm pretty sure Seth will probably be involved. April, yeah. Seth will probably be involved in that as well. Anyway, wrap it all up. If you want to donate, you know, we can always use your support in that way. Or if you're looking or interested in volunteering, give us a try. See if we're the kind of place you want to volunteer for. And feel free to ask any of our volunteers here that you see what it's like to volunteer. Take it from them. Don't take it just from me.